Hey everybody, I want to talk about recent tweet where I was suggesting, it wasn't verbatim from a conversation, but something to the effect that like, no, I'm sorry, I don't have a bunch of exercises for you and your trainer to do. And I don't mind that that's an expectation that people have of me or somebody that, or other physical therapists or chiropractors that hold themselves to a very, very high standard. I'll be the first to say it. I expect to be able to put a package together. If I can't do it in an hour, maybe 2 hours, and I'm actually considering opening the length of my initial assessment time periods for that purpose. But nonetheless, sometimes it just doesn't work that way. And I feel terrible. If I can't help create a solution, I feel terrible because if that's what the person expects, I want to be able to deliver that. One of the most flattering things that I have been told is that, well, Charlie, you're probably one of the best folks out there, and this is not verbatim, and I hate saying these things, but it'll help put some color to this particular topic, is that you can come up with a training program for somebody who's pretty banged up. Well, I'm also going to be the first to say that can't always happen, especially when there's pain through the spine, because that kind of really limits what we can accomplish from a fitness standpoint. And it's a situation very often where this is a very classic stabilization type of patient. Whether you want to call it a proximal stabilization, you want to call it sagittal stabilization. This can be very, very difficult, where in this case, from a patient that I saw earlier this week, I actually felt very strongly that I knew what I wanted to try. But if the trainer doesn't have the exact same knowledge base, and in this case, it would have been a lot of DNS-based exercises. And for those that are highly trained in DNS, not people that just took a course thinking they can do some magic, there's this zigs and zags. Like you can't just say, do this exercise and expect every single person to execute it correctly, or to even assume that it was the correct exercise in the first place. When we come to these motor skill acquisition drills, it could be good on paper, but it doesn't always mean that it's going to work. And the context and how it's coached and how it's received is also going to impact the success of that drill. So this is the kind of patient that I saw earlier. Like, the reality, yeah, I probably would be able to accomplish some very positive things that would meet their goals by spending 3 to 4 hours a week with them to be able to build a package, things they can do on their own, add to the package, progress the package, etc. And I really felt very difficult, and fitness just didn't fit. Now, that particular patient was discussing how they're in pain all day, they're in pain standing, they're in pain. There was nothing that gave us any directional preference. It was just a very significant situation that they've been dealing with a long time. They had been told a whole bunch of things that I asked them to dismiss after the session. I certainly don't do that while we're doing it, but there was a lot of psychosocial, but there was also a biological component to this as well. And telling them everything they've been told is wrong probably isn't always the best thing after you have created some degree of rapport and understanding of where you're going with your information after an evaluation. I'm sorry, I don't have fitness. I mean, listen, you're telling me you're in pain, 90% of your waking hours. I don't even know what exercises. Well, what about kickboxing? Oh my God, I don't know. I mean, do you do kickboxing this way, or do you do it this way? And I had them put their hand in my back, and I arched really heavy. And do you kick that way, or do you kick more with a neutral lumbar spine? Because I thought that was part of it. Very not complicated in my mind, but very complicated to progress if I was only going to see them in this consultant role, if you will, where not everybody can be one and done. Now, there's other situations where people are like, oh my God, magical. Now, during that session, we actually went to reflex locomotion, and it was a dramatic response, which is really cool. Nonetheless, I don't expect that to last, because if they can't understand what the values are in terms of that breathing pattern, then I'm not sure there was going to be a significant progression forward. So I don't know what's going to happen. But then it got coupled. A very close friend of mine asked me, and I knew why he was asking, because someone asked him, hey, what are some exercises for diastasis recti? And very similar to other sagittal stabilization exercises, I'm like, dude, like, it could be a number of different things. And obviously that diastasis could happen from a number of different types of precursors. It's not always, there are other ways to get diastasis other than giving birth. And I believe what I said was, how about we try to focus on a neutral spine, but let's minimize things that would create significant tension through the rectus abdominis and the obliques. Maybe that's the best advice I could give to somebody. Well, what are those exercises? I'm like, okay, fine. It's breathing, probably breathing exercises. But, man, you can't just tell somebody to do that, because breathing is not about air exchange in the lungs. If we're going to call that something, we can call it respiration. Breathing is using these muscles that are reflexive in nature. So then my buddy was like, oh, so we're trying to get the pelvic floor. I'm like, oh, man, like, so yes, obviously the pelvic floor is a significant component, but I will never, ever say pelvic floor, because for most people, if you give them this distant type of information, they're going to think pelvic floor exercises. In fact, pelvic floor is a significant part of how my patient, and probably, but I did not see anybody, this was just distant advice, for a diastasis recti, pelvic floor would be a part of it. But I would never have them do Kegels, because Kegels are doing the opposite of what the pelvic floor would do in an ideal stereotypical a breathing pattern where the abdominals become highly pressurized. So I've now totally exploded any opportunity to give distant advice. So I said, just don't do this. And of course, that's not, when somebody is going to look for diagnosis on the internet, they're looking for, just give me the exercises and tell me what to do. That's fitness. And the bigger message that I'd like to use these examples for is that, unfortunately, you cannot always have fitness be part of a significant movement problem or a painful problem. Diastasis recti may not be associated with pain, but it's a significant concern where the impact of that stabilization strategy in the lumbar spine will indeed affect other areas and maybe lead to overloads or perceptions of pain. But, you know, this isn't a sprained ankle where you could do pull-ups. This isn't being in a boot and training on your knees. This isn't a kettlebell, one-arm kettlebell squats while your other arm is in a sling. That's really a very powerful and absolutely huge gap in what we see in physical therapy, because that if we don't access those types of things, there's a significant amount of humoral and hormonal responses that can not jump a surgical protocol, but certainly improve the healing process, as well as perception of pain. But when you're dealing with the spine, it's very difficult to get into those, and it's very difficult if the trainer doesn't know the exercises. Then the other piece that's very important is if you're going to be this consultant type of physical therapist, whether it's online or whether it's in person, the people have to know what you're doing, because you could have the very, very best video and 16 bullet points, and there's probably a better chance that the person's going to be doing it wrong or not quite efficient if there's not this read and react level of coaching. So I feel miserable when I can't deliver whatever anybody wants, whether it's in physical therapy or just in general. But I think it's important that to understand that you cannot always bring a fitness solution to a painful or a medical problem. And that's maybe I put myself into that bucket, but I think it's important to understand you can't always do that. You can get there, you can absolutely get there, but sometimes the exercises that are so at a very remedial entry point, they're very, very difficult to just say do this in your warm up and then do whatever else. It doesn't get it done. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope it can put some very ideal, realistic expectations of when, as a trainer, you do refer out to someone, because in no way, shape, or form should that therapist or chiro be taking that person away, but they also not need to have the integrity of saying, man, like, I just don't know.